Gregg Popovich missed a game Tuesday for personal reasons, and the Spurs missed a chance to make history. Tim Duncan was named head coach, and not Becky Hammon. Hammon is in her 6th season as Spurs assistant coach. Duncan's been there for 1 year, and people are pissed. Becky Hammon has been coaching as an assistant for Coach Pop for 6 years, and he gives the nod to Tim Duncan with half a season of experience. This is what women in sports are talking about. Just give him a shot. So the Spurs had a perfect night to showcase and give an opportunity to Becky Hammon to coach the team, and decided to go with Tim Duncan instead. Tim Duncan has been an assistant for like 12 minutes and already gets the interim nod over Becky Hammon. That's some weak shit. So those are fans. I think the media is upset because Tim Duncan apparently treats them just like Coach Popovich.
What brought you out of retirement in the first place? What was the overriding reason you did this?
We're talking about the game, or are we trying to do interviews here for other things?
It's a question everyone's been asking.
Yeah, I'm just here for the fun of it.
Good times. Becky Hammon could be an NBA head coach someday, but last night was not the right time. The fact is, Tim Duncan is infinitely more qualified than she is. In this video, I'll explain why it would have been a horrible thing for Becky Hammon to be Spurs head coach against Charlotte. Hey guys, it's Casey Kiernan, host of the AM Hoops YouTube channel and over on the AM Hoops podcast, wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Hit subscribe. We're coming out with 5 quality videos Monday through Friday, always dropping at 6 Eastern. Say what's up on Twitter at Casey Kiernan or over on IG at AM Hoops. Let's get one thing straight right off the top. The Spurs are there to win basketball games, not make social history. Pop has said several times he did not hire Becky Hammon to be an assistant because she's a woman and to make history. He did it because she was the best person for that job at that time. There was a chance for her to make history and be head coach when Pop was ejected in November. But Pop said then and made it very clear, Tim Duncan was appointed to be head coach then. End of story.
Did Becky, it would have been a chance for her to make history tonight. Was that ever a consideration? Or?
I'm not here to make history.
More good times. And it would have definitely been history against Charlotte if Becky Hammon was named an NBA head coach in the regular season. It's never happened before. And sports has always been a great agent of change in society, breaking the color barrier, LGBTQ rights. But if Pop had appointed Becky Hammon head coach, he would have cheapened that history. Bottom line, she is just not the best person for that job on that staff. Now, some people will argue, yes, she is. Becky Hammon's in her 6th season as assistant coach. Duncan is in his 1st. Great players don't automatically become great coaches. Ask Magic Johnson, Wayne Gretzky, Diego Maradona. But Tim Duncan is different. He was known as one of the smartest players of all time, the greatest power forward of all time. He was a leader on the court. He organized the Spurs' legendary defense for years. Duncan was so effective in his post-prime because his basketball IQ was so high. Even Pop has admitted Duncan was basically an assistant coach for those last 15 plus years. Now at the same time, Becky Hammon, a very good player herself, she was nominated, though not selected, for the Hall of Fame as a player. But Tim Duncan's resume still outweighs Hammon's, even with her 6 seasons as an assistant. And if you still disagree, let me put it this way. If her name was John Hammon and not Becky Hammon, would people be this outraged about Tim Duncan coaching last night? No, people are just so hungry to see that history made, they don't even care if it would be legitimate history, if it would cheapen that historic moment. For example, Larry Bird was a special assistant to the Celtics front office after he retired. Then with 0 coaching experience, he took over the Indiana Pacers in 1997. Should Rick Carlisle have gotten that job in 1997? At the time, he'd been an assistant for 8 years. No, and no one cared. It's Larry frickin' Legend. If Tom Brady retired tomorrow, do you think some Patriots assistant who had been there for like 5+ years would be more qualified to coach the Pats? Hell no! Brady would be the best person for that job. He's been in the system for 20+ years. We say it all the time, from Tom Brady to Peyton Manning to Tim Duncan. They're like an assistant coach on the court or on the field. If you think just because Becky Hammon has held a clipboard for 5+ years and coached in the Summer League and so on, she's more qualified than Tim Duncan, you are wrong. This guy on Twitter commented that Becky has been there for years and Tim's been there for about 5 minutes, and actually it's the opposite. Becky is the one who's been there for like 5 minutes. Tim's been there since the 1990s, leading teams, an integral part to the winningest sports franchise in 20 years. The entire point of people who want Becky Hammon to be head coach was that she's good enough, despite being a woman. And if the Spurs had appointed Hammon as head coach to make a point about women being good enough, that would defeat the entire point. When it organically happens, and she is head coach because she is the best person in that room to win basketball games, the real social significance will then occur. Had Pop appointed her for the novelty of it or to make a point, it would have been lessened. It wouldn't have been about Becky as head coach. It would have been about Pop trying to make history. Now, the good news is I think Becky Hammon could be an NBA head coach someday, and that history will be made. She's been an assistant coach for 5+ years. She coached the Spurs Summer League to a title. And besides, she's a Spurs assistant coach. We know they always get a shot in the NBA. In fact, Hammon's name has already been rumored for several different head coach openings. She was rumored for the Pistons job before Dwayne Casey got it. Recently, the Knicks. In fact, she turned down coaching the Colorado State men's basketball team. And look, I've got no idea if she's going to be successful wherever she goes. Unfortunately, first of all, I think some guys are still closed-minded and are not going to respect her as they would a male head coach, which is BS. Then there's the same reasons coaches fail every year, the biggest of which, not having talent on the roster. But we have every reason to think she will be a good head coach. She's earned a shot, but not in San Antonio as long as Tim Duncan is there. Basketball is the only major American team sport where women share at least some of the spotlight with men. There are female head coaches all over at the Hall of Fame. Actually, I think it's really stupid that a female has not been a head coach already in basketball and in other sports too. There is no prerequisite of being a guy to coach a guy's sport. You don't even have to have played at a high level or have been successful. Gregg Popovich, Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll, Nick Saban, Eric Spoelstra, the list goes on and on. In fact, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a legendary player who's also a legendary coach. We already mentioned a few who can attest to that, Magic Johnson, of course. Historically, it's a good idea too. I mean, teams that broke the color barrier first had a big edge on teams that remained segregated. Texas Western won an NCAA national championship in college basketball. Texas Western, not Duke or North Carolina or UCLA. They had never won before, and they probably will never win again. Texas Western was the first team with an all-black starting five. Jackie Robinson was the first black player in Major League Baseball. Not only did the Dodgers get a Rookie of the Year, a Hall of Famer, a 6-time All-Star, they also eventually won a World Series. Nowadays, it's obvious how foolish it is and would be to exclude someone for something that has nothing to do with being good or bad at the job. In fact, I think throughout history, or even today, there is a Gregg Popovich or Bill Belichick out there that could be coaching your team to titles, but she's not because she's a woman. Now, I'm not saying that Becky Hammon is Gregg Popovich, but I think she should be given a chance. The outrage about this right now is the same outrage we get on social media about social topics. It's people whose only campaign for social justice is sitting at a keyboard and shaming people. That's it. No protests, no volunteer work, just sitting and calling people names, and in this case, sexist. In no world is it sexist to give a Hall of Fame player a job he's overqualified for. Tim Duncan is one of the greatest players of all time. His physical and mental skill directly led to the Spurs' 5 titles. Without Tim, there are no banners. Especially in his later years, once David Robinson retired, he led teams through the gauntlet of the playoffs and that ultimate prize. Tim knows exactly what it takes to get where the Spurs want to go because he's been there many times. To put it in other words, there's very little that Becky Hammon could teach Tim Duncan about basketball he doesn't already know. And he wouldn't have enough time in his life to teach her everything he knows. It's not a gender thing, it's a basketball thing. And after all, the Spurs are a basketball franchise, and Pop did not hire Becky Hammon because she's a woman. So she shouldn't be elevated because she's a woman either. I think one day she will be elevated. She will get that NBA head coaching job, not because she is a woman, but because she is the best person for that job. And on that day, a legitimate barrier will be broken. Support AM Hoops and click subscribe. Don't miss a daily NBA video.